Well, I mean, the government's one big pyramid scheme, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, you can tell me better than anybody.
Social Security is the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time.
That's apparently what our billionaire shadow president, Elon Musk, thinks about Social Security. That it is a Ponzi scheme, which is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard, and perhaps the most grotesque lie that's ever been told about the program. Social Security is a wildly successful program that has lifted more than 22 million Americans out of poverty, including 16.3 million senior citizens 65 and older. So, no, Social Security is not a Ponzi scheme. Quite the opposite, actually. But you see, the real problem with Social Security for oligarchs like Elon Musk is that him and his rich friends aren't able to profit off of it. It's a lot of money, a huge pool of money that's untouchable to people like him, which is why he's lying about it. Because if he can convince you that the program doesn't work, then maybe, crossing his fingers, you'll be open to a number of solutions that'll coincidentally make people like him even richer. But he's not going to admit that, of course, because that would be very unpopular. So instead, he couches his attack on Social Security in performative concern for the people who rely on it, as if his motivations are altruistic, when in actuality, what he's saying here is very insidious. So we're going to listen to him lie about Social Security. Just know what he's saying is incorrect, and there's not going to be any pushback, of course, because Joe Rogan just lets billionaires lie on his program now regularly. But when we come back, we're going to explain why he's wrong.
Well, people pay into Social Security, and the money goes out of Social Security immediately. But the obligation for Social Security is your entire retirement career. So you're paying with you're paying like if you look at the future obligations of Social Security, it far exceeds the tax revenue. Far. Have you ever looked at the debt clock?
Yes.
Okay. There's our present day debt, but then there's our future obligations. So when you look at the future obligations of Social Security, the actual national debt is like double what people think it is because of the future obligations. So basically people are living way longer than expected. And there are fewer babies being born. So you have more people who are retired and that live for a long time and get retirement payments. So the future obligations. So however bad the financial situation is right now for the federal government, it will be much worse in the future.
There's something so dystopian about a multimillionaire bringing on a multi-billionaire to lie to people who probably don't even have $1,000 to their name. But I mean, even though Joe Rogan is too fucking dumb to dissect the bullshit that Elon Musk was spewing there, I think that this weird-ass sound that he made during Elon Musk's screed actually did a good job to at least summarize my feelings at a minimum. I don't know what that was, but maybe it was Joe Rogan realizing, this doesn't sound right, but I don't know how to combat what you're saying because me brain no work. Listen, if you're too fucking stupid to fact check the billionaire that you bring onto your program every single other fucking week, it seems like maybe you should stop bringing him on, Joe. Because what Elon Musk is saying here is complete horseshit. And if you are not equipped with the knowledge to fact check him when he lies about every single thing, maybe you shouldn't bring him on. But thankfully, some Democrats saw this clip after it went viral, and they responded by calling him out. AOC, for example, tweeted, "This guy is a leech on the public. No matter how many billions he gets in tax cuts and government contracts, it will never be enough for him. Now he's going after the elderly, the disabled, and orphan children so he can pocket it in tax cuts for himself. It's disgusting." Greg Kaser chimed in saying, "A guy who makes $8 million a day off of the government thinks seniors getting $65 a day they work their whole lives to earn is a Ponzi scheme. Protect Social Security, fire Elon Musk." And while it's true that Elon Musk wants to cut Social Security to finance more tax cuts for him, there's another motive behind it as well that we're going to get to in this video. But first, I want to get to what Bernie Sanders said in an interview with NBC because he was asked about Elon Musk's lies, and Bernie Sanders did the best job at debunking everything that he said.
Now, I think what Musk, the wealthiest guy in the world, just said is totally outrageous. That's a hell of a Ponzi scheme when for the last 80 years, Social Security has paid out every nickel owed to every eligible American. Quite a Ponzi scheme. What is in fact a problem is that if we don't make reforms and improve the funding mechanism, in the next 9 years, the Social Security Trust Fund, which provides about 20% of the funding, will go broke. So what we have got to do, and I think most Americans agree, and I've just introduced legislation to do that, is you lift the cap on taxable income. Right now, Musk, worth $400 billion, contributes the same amount into the Social Security Trust Fund as somebody making $170 million. You lift that cap, we can extend the solvency of Social Security for 75 years, and you can raise benefits. Kristen, right now in America, half of elderly people are trying to get by on $30,000 a year, 22% on $15,000 a year. We've got to raise Social Security benefits. We've got to expand Medicare to include hearing, dental, and vision, not go after these programs which are so important to millions of our seniors.
And what he said there is key, because for years, politicians have been telling us that Social Security is going bankrupt if we don't take immediate action to save the program. But the way that they've talked about Social Security has always been very disingenuous, not just because of their feigned concern for the program, but the way they describe the program itself. For example, we're always given about a 10 to 15 year deadline for Social Security's doomsday. For example, I remember 2015 being in grad school, hearing about how Social Security was supposedly going to be insolvent by 2027. But every year, Social Security's doomsday conspicuously gets pushed back. A couple of years ago, 2021, 2022, we were told that it was 2033. Today, it's 2035 apparently, and by 2026, I'm assuming the new projected doomsday for Social Security is going to be 2036 or 2037. But I mean, why? Why does it keep getting pushed back? See, we've banked a lot of money into Social Security. There's a lot of money that we've put into its trust fund, which is admittedly depleting, albeit slowly. But that's not the only way that it's funded. It's mostly funded through payroll taxes, and since Americans are still paying into Social Security through their taxes, well, overall, its funding remains about the same, but it shrinks gradually, slowly. But that's why its insolvency date keeps getting postponed. So in order to believe that Social Security's death is right around the corner, they're relying on this assumption that everyone stops paying into it immediately, which is weird, right? Because say you had $10,000 saved in your bank account and your rent was $2,500 a month. You wouldn't say that you're 4 months away from bankruptcy, right? Because the expectation is that you're going to continue to work and ideally add to your savings so that way you have a bigger cushion in the event you do lose your job. So the way that they talk about Social Security is extremely weaselly because they're lying to you. And I'm giving you an oversimplification, but the language that they use here is key because everything that they're doing is in service to this goal of trying to get you to think that there's a problem that requires a solution. Now, it's true that little by little, the Social Security cushion that we have does shrink, but the goal is to get you to think that its demise is imminent to create this sense of urgency among the public to let them reform it immediately. Extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures. So if the public understands that we're doing something to save Social Security, like cut it, then maybe they'll let us do that if we create this sense of urgency. Now, what they also don't tell you is that the looming deadline that they're always fear-mongering about isn't the end of the program itself. Rather, it is the projected time when the program won't pay out benefits in full. In other words, Social Security would still pay out around 83% of benefits should the doomsday they've been warning us about ever arrive. But politicians like Bernie Sanders have been saying for a very long time that the one thing that you can do, the simple fix that you can apply to make sure that Social Security is fully solvent for decades as opposed to just 1 decade, is to lift the cap. So that way rich people like Elon Musk are paying as much into it as everybody else. And whenever you hear a politician talk about needing to fix Social Security, if they don't use those 3 words, lift the cap, odds are they're probably going to try to fuck with your Social Security. That is the simplest thing that you can do, but they don't want to do that. There's a reason for that. Now, if they did that, it wouldn't just extend Social Security solvency by decades. It would allow us to expand benefits for everyone with this one simple fix. It sounds too good to be true, but it really is the easiest thing that you can do. The question is, why hasn't this easy fix been implemented? Why not just lift the cap and end the conversation altogether? Well, the reason why is because rich people want to privatize Social Security so that way they can make money off of it. And every lie that they tell about Social Security or every reform that they propose is in service to that long-term goal of privatizing Social Security, because the idea is if you make it worse, you'll open the door to privatization, which would be a boon for Wall Street. See, this is what neoliberals have been doing for decades with all of our public services. They defund government programs, complain about how they don't work anymore after they deliberately broke it, then they use the problem that they created to justify a private solution since the government isn't equipped to handle it. I mean, one solution that we hear with regard to Social Security is raising the retirement age. We hear that all the time. And Republicans propose this as if it's an alternative to cutting Social Security, when in actuality, it is just a cut, since they are reducing overall lifetime benefits that will be paid out with Social Security. That's money that you put into it, so you should get it all back. Now, as Matt Brunig of the People's Policy Project points out, raising the retirement age isn't actually going to change when you retire. It just changes how much money you get, because as he explains, Social Security does not have one retirement age. It has 96 retirement ages, one for each month between age 62 and 70. What people call the full retirement age, the FRA, is just a placeholder in a formula that determines the benefit level at all 96 retirement ages. People who retire at the FRA receive 100% of the primary insurance amount, which is a dollar figure derived from a formula applied to each individual's earnings record. People who retire before or after the FRA receive less or more than 100% of the PIA based on how far away the FRA they are when they retire. Now, as you can see from this graph here, which shows you all 96 different retirement ages, basically the longer that you wait to retire, the more money you get. And not to mention, they already raised the retirement age before. They implemented the solution that they said would save Social Security, but yet that hasn't done the trick, because it's not the trick. The trick is to lift the cap, but they don't want to do that because they don't want to fix Social Security. And over time, they've been conditioning us to just accept that we're going to work until we die, and we should work until we die, not only because working until we die is good, but because retirement might not be an option because of the status of Social Security. So in raising the retirement age and calling it a Ponzi scheme to insinuate that you're not going to get back what you put into the system, people like Elon Musk are trying to delegitimize Social Security so that way you'll be open to privatization out of desperation. And this isn't unique to Social Security, by the way. I mean, they do this to all of our public services. Remember pensions? That's been completely replaced, basically, by 401ks, the private option. There's also Medicare. Rather than expanding benefits to fill in gaps, they've introduced Medicare Advantage into the equation, which is a private insurance company scam run by corporations like United Healthcare. They'd also love nothing more than to do away with our postal service, so that way private corporations like UPS and FedEx profit off of our public service, and we hear them talk about USPS as if it's inefficient and not making enough money, when that's not the point of it. The point isn't to make a profit. The point is to provide the public with a public good. It doesn't make them money to deliver to rural areas, but the point isn't to make money. The point is to be a public service. So outsourcing that responsibility to private corporations is going to hurt people. It's going to stop people who rely on USPS in rural areas that FedEx doesn't deliver to. And the whole point is to make money. I mean, think about public schools. That's another one. We hear more and more about school vouchers as an option in lieu of public education, so that way tax dollars can be funneled directly into private schools instead of public ones. We are gradually losing all of our public programs because billionaires like Elon Musk are taking over the government, and they're lobbying politicians to let them profit off of our public services, things that are supposed to be the public good, not a money-making venture for private corporations. And Social Security is one thing that these crooks haven't been able to touch, and they've been salivating over it for decades because it is a massive pool of untouched money. So if they can break it, like public education or pensions or the postal system, that'll make a private Social Security option, offered by Wall Street, of course, look preferable after running the program into the fucking ground. It's death by 1,000 cuts, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Elon Musk is already in the process of doing that right now to Social Security. And I say this because the former Social Security administrator, Martin O'Malley, he is sounding the alarm right now because Doge is taking actions that is endangering Social Security. CNBC explains, O'Malley said Doge leaders are now making changes at the agency and significant staff cuts have already led to system outages. Those intermittent IT outages may happen more frequently and for more extended periods of time until there is a system collapse and an interruption of benefits, he said. The American public needs to understand that one of their major social safety nets is in dire jeopardy, said Jill Hornick, a union official at the American Federation of Government Employees, Local 1395, which primarily represents Social Security offices in Illinois. On Thursday, the Social Security Administration sent a notice to employees that gives them until March 14th to decide whether to take an early buyout. Unlike a previous January offer, this now includes service employees, and staffing reductions in that area may impact how quickly the agency processes benefit claims and provides other services, Hornick said. So Elon Musk is already doing damage to Social Security. By making these cuts, he's making it less efficient on purpose, even though the whole point of Doge is to make sure government is efficient. Well, he's deliberately making it less efficient and making sure that it doesn't function the way that it's supposed to function because he wants to break the program. What he's doing now, these cuts that he's making, it's going to lead to claims by new retirees taking longer to process. So if you're one of the people retiring in the next year or two, you're going to be directly affected by this. As for people already on Social Security, thankfully, your payments are supposed to be dispersed automatically. So staffing shortages, in theory, can't necessarily hurt that. But the bad news is that, as Martin O'Malley pointed out, if these outages continue and there's nobody there with technical expertise to address an outage should one come up, that could actually disrupt payments. And for the former Social Security administrator to warn that a collapse of the system could actually feasibly disrupt Social Security payments for the first time in the program's history, that is huge. It demonstrates how serious the situation is. And make no mistake about it, this is a coordinated attack on Social Security. Doge knows what they're doing. It's why Elon Musk is also, aside from just destroying it within, waging a propaganda campaign against Social Security as well. Now, fellow YouTuber I Am Blakely shared an old clip from George Carlin, and this was perfect. So he said this in 2006, and even though it's decades old, it's more relevant now than it ever has been. So I'm going to leave you with this, because you shouldn't just accept that he's going to destroy Social Security. You should be angry, and you should show up to town halls, call up your representative, and let them know that you don't support what's happening right now, even if resistance does seem futile. But regardless, here's what George Carlin said about this situation decades ago.
It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right. They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table and figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. They don't want that. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork, and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your fucking retirement money. They want it back, so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later, because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. By the way, it's the same big club they use to beat you over the head with all day long when they tell you what to believe. All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged, and nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hardworking people, white collar, blue collar, doesn't matter what color shirt you have on. Good, honest, hardworking people continue. These are people of modest means. Continue to elect these rich cocksuckers who don't give a fuck about them. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you at all. At all. At all. Yeah. You know? And nobody seems to notice, nobody seems to care. That's what the owners count on, the fact that Americans will probably remain willfully ignorant of the big red, white, and blue dick that's being jammed up their assholes every day. Because the owners of this country know the truth. It's called the American dream, because you have to be asleep to believe it.
Luigi, not happy.